I've been programming professionally for about 12 years. Wow, we actually started programming nearish the same time professionally. I did my own startup. I don't consider it quite professional because I worked with nobody else. But in the workforce, I'm sitting at right around 12 years or 13 years in workforce time. With startup time, I'm about 15, so that would put us nearish the same time, given the difference here. Here are some things I've worked with on the last 2 years. In a small team, averaging 3 people, I think, in a little under a year, we built a squeal query planner that passed the greater than 6 million tests in the squeal logic test suite. Nice. I figured out how to decorrelate arbitrary squeal subqueries. I wasn't the first person to figure this out, but I got there independently. Nice. I demonstrated a mode of consistency failure in various popular streaming systems that I believe was not widely understood at the time. I wrote a text editor, really, that I use for coding and writing every day. It took me on the order of 100 hours of work. Interesting. Why not just? I mean, I know it's for fun. It's funsy, but why not just use NeoVim with Zen mode? Low latency text editor, not intended to be useful for anyone but me. It's in SIG. Nice. That's cool. For funsies, it's fine. Funsies, you do funsies. Funsies, I don't care. It's hard to write these examples without sounding like I'm, but to be very clear, I don't think that these projects are particularly impressive in context. They are kind of the projects that someone with a decade of experience in a specialized area should be capable of. This is a great take, by the way. This is a great take, because often what people do is they read something like this, they're newish to work, and they work on React, and that's like their life, and they're like, I could never. What does it even mean to decorrelate arbitrary squeal subqueries, right? Like, it feels impossible in your brain. It's not. This is what a decade of doing one thing looks like. You can just do this because that's what you've been doing. You've been thinking about one thing, and that's good. Like, that's really, really fun. But there are also projects that I would have failed at even 5 years ago. My ability now isn't due to any talent or grand insight, but instead hundreds of tiny changes in habits, processes, and values. When I compare these changes in online writing and discussions about how to get better at programming, I see very little overlap. All this is, but it's what do you do? The changes that led me to being more efficient are either not talked about or at all, or in direct opposition to popular advice. Ooh, I like this. I'm hesitant to write these kind of posts because they're veer. I don't know this word. What does this word mean? Change direction suddenly. American football. What? Oh, to like veer off the road. Oh, I know that word. That's weird. They veer awfully close. I've never heard it used in this context. Yeah, I know veer off course, but veer awfully close to flame bait. I prefer to write things that are strongly factual rather than opinion based. I mean, fair, but I mean, so the only problem I have with like this type of statement is that whenever you write anything, and whenever you think of anything, and whenever you use your experience to write something, you're writing only about your perspective that you've had over a decade, and someone else can arrive to a vastly different conclusion. That's why I think NeoVim is the greatest editor of all time, and there are people that are like, no, VS Code is the greatest editor of all time. I don't think, that's experience speaking, right? That's somebody's experience speaking to why they do things. Right? So, like, it's hard to not have opinion-based things, especially in tech. It's extremely difficult. But there are a lot of things that I wish I could go back in time and tell my younger self, and the situation hasn't gotten much better since. There are a lot of high-quality writing aimed at people who are just learning to program, but very little that helped me figure out how to program from being a novice. I love this. When I started reflecting on what has and hasn't worked for me, I found a lot to write down. So I tried to roughly organize them. Bad advice, things unlearned, emotional management, setting goals, speed matters, moving faster, coding, testing, writing. Nice. I want to check some of these. Noticeable gaps where I don't have useful experience to offer. Maintaining large code, operating long-lived systems, collaboration, working in teams. It's good to know your blind spots, because if you're always working on small things, that's good. Let's check out on bad advice. All right. Like many programmers, I'm self-taught. I rarely worked with anyone more experienced than myself, especially early in my career, where I spent a lot of time working with 20-something-year-olds who also had only a few years of experience. So we all learned about how to program from advice we found on the internet, especially posts that were shared via sites like Reddit and Hacker News. Much of my progress then, unlearning those things. In hindsight, most of the writing and discussions I read about online about how to program was actively harmful to my ability to successfully produce code. Interesting. Okay, I'm curious what this all has to say. It feels like this is gonna be such a good one. It feels like it's gonna be good. Not to say that most programmers are bad programmers. It's not automatically the case that good programmers will produce good advice. Ooh, I like this. Or that good advice will be more widely shared than bad advice. Interesting. The paradox of choice is widely told folktale about a single experiment in which putting more kinds of jam on a resulted in less purchases. The given explanation is that choice is stressful, and so some people facing too many possible jams will just bounce out entirely and go home without jam. This experiment is consistently cited in news and media, usually with the description like scientists that choice is bad for you. I've seen this. They call it decision fatigue. Is like another reason you'll hear about people who will only wear certain clothing. I actually do this. Real talk, I have a drawer with shirts and pants in it, and that's it. I grab the top ones every day, and I put them on. Today, I'm wearing a long sleeve, uncolored standard shirt. Like, that's it. I don't make any decisions about what I wear. And I'm wearing 2-day-old, which is probably not good. They're a little dirty. Anyways.
U-Track is a project management system that's designed to be flexible. You can customize projects to meet the exactly.
But if you go to a large supermarket, you'll see approximately 12 million varieties of jam. Have we not learned from the jam experiment? Nancy relates in Uncontrolled. First note that all of the inference is built on the purchases of a grand total of 35 jars of jam. Second note, the results of the jam experiment were valid and with the kind of generality required to be relevant on the basis for economic and social policy, it would imply that many stores could eliminate 75% of their products and cause sales to increase by 900%. That would be fairly outstanding. Astounding result, and indicate that there may be a problem with the measurement. Yes, that sounds way too fantastical. Every store, this one trick to increase 900% sales. The researchers in original experiment themselves were careful about their explicit claims of generalizability. The significant effort that devoted the exact question of finding conditions under which choice overload occurs consistently, but popularized telescope the conclusions derived from one coupon display promotions themselves can frequently change. For example, we discover that a specific sales promotion drives a net gain in profit versus no promotion in a test. But next year, a huge number of changes occur. Our competitors have innovated with new promotions. The overall economy has deteriorated. Consumer traffic has shifted somewhat from malls to strip malls, and so on. This rule no longer holds true. To extend the prior metaphor, we are finding our way through the dark room by bumping our shins into furniture, while unobserved gremlins keep moving the furniture around on us. I used to play a game where we used to blindfold one person, and then we'd spin them in circles and shift all the furniture in the room. And then you'd get points by punching them without them touching you. And whoever got touched became the new person. And then I met somebody who used to play something they'd call Buckethead, where they'd give somebody a wiffle ball bat and a bucket. And you'd play in a baseball diamond. And Buckethead would be swinging a bat everywhere. And your goal was to see who could touch Buckethead without getting hit with the wiffle ball bat. I feel like I would have loved that game. Sounds like a great time. By the way, TJ's coming over. TJ, you want to play Buckethead with me? I think we could have a great time, TJ. That explains the brain damage. Dude, it sounds great. For these reasons, it is not enough to run an experiment, to find the causal relationship, and assume that it is widely applicable. We must run tests and then measure the actual predictiveness of the rules developed from those tests in actual implementation. Here's a really good, I'll give you guys a really good example here. A project a friend worked on was to do play prediction for videos. That means as you went through the list of videos, you would find a video, and then we'd start prefetching that data, right? It was like a really good thing. It was the project was called Destiny. It was awesome. It improved play rate. People were more happy. People liked to watch more. Everything was great. And then as time went on, there's observations that we're just fetching a lot. It's like our UI got more complicated, and then as everything kind of all got together, our original assumption could actually be wrong, because now we're just putting too much memory, too much pressure. Things became less and less easy to use because we're just doing too much. So it took a lot of asking a lot of people, but I finally got an okay, and I just turned off Destiny. That was my test. Just turn off Destiny. And when I turned off Destiny, I called the project Fate, by the way. The Fate of Destiny. I thought it was just it was glorious. And guess what? When I turned it off, there was an increase in view. There was an increase in watching, but there was a play delay. It actually caused it to take longer. Yes, we get it. You think you're funny, sort of funny. But like there was a delay in startup, but there was more watching. Oh, dude, it was so good. It was funny how, like, this happens. Your landscape shifts, and the initial assumptions you've made of what is good is no longer good. It actually slowed down the play rate, but we had less crashes because we're using less memory, and that's because our UI got more complicated. Something shifted out of underneath it. Like, that means your original assumptions were good assumptions. They were right. And I still think that it is right to fetch data beforehand and have fast playback. But just because it was right at one point does not mean it's right at all times. This is great. This is beautiful. This is beautiful. This is what I think about when I see a blog post with penny wisdom drawn from a single experience in a single domain. Programming covers an enormous range of activities with different problem domains, team sizes, management structures, project lifespans, development sizes, deployment frequencies, hardware performance requirements, consequences for failures, etc. We should expect it to be incredibly rare that any given practice is appropriate across all those contexts, let alone that we can discover general best practices from the outcome of a few projects. Love it. Details matter. Tacit knowledge or implicit knowledge as opposed to formal, codified, or explicit. I think every software developer inherently understands that. You can look at a new library or look at something, and you can have like a bad feeling about it. You may not be able to express exactly why you have a bad feeling. No, okay, I know something's wrong, but I can't explain why immediately. But I don't think this is going to be good as it goes out. The ability to speak a language, ride a bicycle, knead dough, play a musical instrument, or design and use complex equipment requires all sorts of knowledge, which is not always known explicitly, even by the expert practitioners, which is difficult or impossible to transfer to other people. Wikipedia. Nice. Programming practices are mostly tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge isn't easy to share. An expert will relate some simple-sounding rule of thumb. But then, grilling them on specific cases will quickly uncover a huge collection of exceptions and caveats that vary depending on the specific details of the situation. These are generated from many, many past experiences and don't generalize well outside of the context of the body experience. Yeah, I mean, this is why Twitter's such a terrible place for advice, and it's also why I don't do any prefacing on Twitter. Because of course everything has context. Of course everything there's nuance. Of course it's all these things. But man, like, just it's so what about like, dude, Twitter's a terrible place. Fact. Trying to apply the rule of thumb without knowledge, knowing all those details tends to result in failure phrases like "don't repeat yourself," "you aren't going to need it," separation of concerns, test-driven development. This was a direct kick. This was a direct kick in Uncle Bob's. Test-driven development area, etc. were originally produced from somebody of valid experience, but then wildly overgeneralized and overapplied without any original nuance. Closure, let's go. The way to convey tacit knowledge, if at all, is via the body of experiences that generate the rule. For this reason, I find much more value in specific experience reports or in watching people actually working as opposed to writing about general principles. I like this. I wish this wasn't such general principles and actually a little bit more practical, but I do like this. General principles about general principles. Yes. Alright, confusing means and ends. The goal is always to write a program that solves some problem and that can be maintained over its useful lifetime. Advice like write short functions is a technique that help achieve that goal in many situations, but it's not a goal in itself. Love that phrase. The goal is not to write small functions. The goal is to have small functions. Some of it, right? Like, it is good to have small functions, but it's not the point. All right, and yet some characteristics of human thinking makes it very easy for these sort of pseudo goals to take over the actual goals. So you may hear people saying that some piece of software is bad because it has very long functions, even if the evidence suggests that it happens to be easy to maintain. I've seen this. I've seen this a lot. When means and ends are confused, it's also often accompanied by the word should and other similar phrases that carry a moral or hygienic weight. This is great. Ought. This is the ought, or is this C.S. Lewis of programming here? I don't even know. E.g., the right way to do it. Clean code versus code smells. I'm pretty sure we've officially just hit the C.S. Lewis mark. Can we all agree? If you write shorter functions, it's often easier to isolate specific behavior in unit tests. Is a concrete claim linking behavior and outcome that you can test and evaluate in context of a specific project. Okay, you should write short functions means that you are a bad programmer if you write long functions. There is nowhere for a conversation to go from there. Agreed. The should problem. All right, technology companies often make incredible profits by using simple technologies to solve business problems. This means that programmers at those companies can make a lot of bad decisions and adopt poor practices and still be successful. Facts. If money falls out of the sky, whatever you do, there isn't much gradient to help discover better practices. For example, Slack is an incredibly successful product, a multi-billion-dollar company, and still does not have reconnecting WebSockets. I can write that code in a tweet. Just put it in. Goodness gracious. If on close, call reconnect with exponential backup. Jeez Louise. Slack. Sorry, I get really angry. Alright, but here it seems like every week I encounter a new bug that makes it completely unusable for me, from taking seconds per character to typing to being completely unable to render a message, dude. Or the best part, if you copy and paste from a code block, you cannot uncode blockify it. That is, I love that. I love that. Oh, hey, is that a code block you copied and pasted? Well, guess what? You can never uncode block it again. Forever. Forevermore, henceforth. Dude. Discord, on the other hand, has always been reliable and snappy despite, judging by my highly scientific Googling, having 1/3 as many employees. So it's not like the chat apps are just intrinsically hard. Dude, it is so annoying. Slack is one of the single worst rich text editors of all time. It is so like, and remember, I've used Jira. Okay, I just throwing it out there, people. I've literally used Jira, and I'm saying this about Slack. Okay. Gosh, I hate Slack. And yet, Slack's technical advice is popular, and if I ran across it without having experience, the result myself would probably seem compelling. The wrong gradient. Jira's pretty bad, though. Jira sucks. But have you used Slack? Jira's not bad. You are clearly a Scrum Master. Social sites like Reddit, Hacker News, Twitter, etc. are dominant in deciding a large portion of the reading material for myself and most other programmers I know. These sites strongly select for short, easy to read, entertaining, and pseudo-controversial opinions. The tech community also heavily skews towards young and inexperienced because it's rapid growth, so voting mechanisms aren't a useful mechanism for distinguishing boring, good ideas from entertaining, bad ideas. Go is boring. Go's great. I also suspect the dynamics are some self-reinforcing. After seeing my many highly voted comments endorsing some particular idea or motto, it starts to sound like it must be widely known to be true. So when you see new comments with the same idea you upvoted them for giving the correct answer. This could allow ideas to persist without needing to be reinforced by any actual success. I get that. Yep. I like this. Boring is good. Boring is great. Looking back at small subset of writing that has, in hindsight, turned out to help me get things done, it tends to be from people who have multiple decades of experience, have substantial technical achievements, are measured and thoughtful rather than highly confident, admit complexity and subtlety rather than having one method to rule them all. Interesting. This is a very interesting take. I always have just something to think about is that you can be told a piece of advice and you can't hear it. Right? Like you just don't have the ears to hear. You don't have the ability to really grasp it. One of the problems about any really thoughtful piece of advice is that you also have to be in a position of experience to hear it. And I find that to be one of the most difficult parts. Like when I was younger, things you told me I couldn't hear. I feel like I personally feel like I have to fail my way to success. It's why I learned, like you watched me program OCaml earlier. The reason why I'm not doing OCaml in the way, like reading every last way to do everything is that for me, I have to do it wrong. I have to write functions that already exist in the standard. I have to do all this kind of stuff because I need to kind of get it. And then it's like, it feels easy to correct things as I go, as opposed to doing it right the first try. I've always been a learn by failure, not a learn by doing things right the first try. Juno, Plato's Cave. There's definitely a bit of Plato's Cave in here. There's something about it that it's like I have to progressively be exposed to. Only by doing what is wrong can you appreciate what is right. Sometimes, right? A fool, so that's the biblical definition of a fool versus a wise person versus the permanent fool, right? A wise hear good advice and learn from hearing good advice. Like that should be all of our goal. A fool to wise person is someone who does something wrong and corrects it. That's good. A fool is just somebody who does not learn from doing something wrong, right? I mean, your ultimate goal should be to Fowler. I like Mark Fowler. I have his book right there. I can see it refactored. If you have to spend effort into looking at a fragment of code to figure out what it's doing, then you should extract it into a function and name the function after what. Any function that has more than a half dozen lines of code starts to smell to me. This is John Carmack. I'm not going to have any issue, I'm not going to issue any mandates, but I want everyone to seriously consider some of these issues. If a function is only called from a single place, consider inlining it. If a function is called from multiple places, see if it is possible to arrange for the work to be done in a single place, perhaps with flags, and inline that. This is great advice, by the way. If there are multiple versions of a function, consider making a single function with more possible default, with more possibly defaulted parameters. If the work is close to purely functional with few references to global state, try to make it completely functional. Try to use const on both parameters and functions when the function really must be used in multiple places. Minimize control flow complexity and area under ifs, favoring consistent execution paths and times over optimally avoiding unnecessary work. To make things more complicated, the do always then inhibit and ignore or ignore strategy, while a very good idea for highly reliable systems is less appropriate in power and thermal constrained environments like mold.
Hello, I'm Leonis, the UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador. Here are 5 things children all over Gaza need most. Protection. For children in Gaza, there is there needs to be an immediate end to the killing and maiming of children in this city.
John Carmack is really good, by the way. Right? John Carmack is really like, I totally agree with this one. Any function with more than a half dozen lines of code, to me, like, I don't like that. Right? I simply do not like this statement. I think Mark Fowler has a lot of good ideas. I mean, his ideas are the basis of refactoring, which I think is great. Like, he has a lot of great stuff. But man, do I not like those type of stuff. Because it has no context. It only has opinion, no context. Right? John Carmack not only looks smart, he also knows BJJ and kick your ass. In the rest of the series, I'm hoping to avoid or at least temper the failure modes above. First, let me be explicit about the context I'm writing from. 70% self-employed, 30% working in small early stage companies, 40% production code versus 60% research, no serious production usage, no long-term maintenance, 30% in code base with 100,000 lines of code or more, 70% in small greenfield projects, mostly systems problems, especially database engines and declarative languages. Some UI work, but all of it exploratory rather than production. I've never had to maintain a code base for more than 2 years. I've never been responsible for running a long-lived service. Nice. Anything that I report having worked well for me has to be considered in that limited context. Second, I'm aiming to accompany every idea with multiple examples. This helps convey the actual details and ensures I'm talking about things that I actually do rather than things I think I should do. Third, where I can, I am including counterexamples where something I used to think was a good idea shut up, caused problems, or was poorly applied. I mean, I like all of these things. These are really good, deep thoughts. I like this. We're gonna have to do another article from him at another time. I want to do more of these. I might do some more, but I like that. Okay, shut up. Shut up. I like this a lot. I think context is really good. The hard part that I see, though, about what he's trying to write is that all context cannot possibly be delivered. Yeah, suck it, pick. But not all context can possibly be delivered, and sometimes you have to decide whether you want nuance versus you write just with general principles. Right? It's like, how much context can you really get out there? It's hard. Anyways, just things to think about. The name is the Primogen.